Alex McCarthy here from inside Indiana. I'm alone here. Zach, Ed, Ken didn't make the trip, so I'll promise to keep this short. I'm a little less long-winded than a certain redheaded colleague of mine, so we'll probably try and keep this to 5 or 8 minutes or so. Not a whole lot to talk about. Obviously, IU loses to Penn State tonight, 45 to 22. It was close for a lot of the it felt a little bit closer for a lot of the first half and for some of the third quarter. IU felt like it was kind of climbing back into it, but they just couldn't capitalize a lot of the time. On whether it was a turnover or they recovered their own onside kick after one of their after I guess their final touchdown in the third quarter, where Ewald does that onside kick that he does so well, where he kind of dribbles it in front of himself, watches it roll 10 yards, and then jumps on it. And then I think they managed just one first down after that. Had to try for a 55-yard field goal, something like that, and got no points out of it. And it was kind of just that kind of night for IU, and especially for Cam Kaufman, who threw for 450 yards. And so, on paper you see, 450, 2 touchdowns. He threw for a 79-yard touchdown to Stephen Houston, which was actually, it was just a swing pass that Houston kind of did a lot of the work and scampered 79 yards for the touchdown. But Kaufman completed just 33 of his 59 passes, obviously the reason he's thrown 59 times is because nothing was going on for IU on the ground. They totaled a net of 24 yards rushing, which is, I think, their third straight game with under 70 yards rushing, which that puts a lot of pressure on Kaufman, on Sudfeld, on whoever's playing quarterback to really just be the whole offense. And tonight Kaufman was just a little off. We saw it last week a little bit on third down, where he would have an open guy and just throw a little behind him, above him, underthrow him, and that happened again tonight. I think he was just 3 for 15 or 3 for 17 on third down, threw a pick on third down. So there were just a lot of opportunities. Or I guess IU as a team was 3 for 17 on third down, and he was kind of along that trend where he just couldn't really get it going, couldn't figure out what the deal was. I know last week Wilson said that Kaufman was a little amped up, a little hyped, so maybe that was the reason he threw a couple errant passes last week. I don't know if that was again the issue this week, but especially with Ted Bolzer, he was looking his way a lot today. Bolzer had 4 catches for 52 yards and a touchdown, but Kaufman was throwing his way a lot and tended to just be just a little bit off. I know on the interception he threw to Bolzer a little bit behind him. Bolzer tipped it, and it was caught by a Penn State defender. So it was just one of those nights for Kaufman where he just was just that little bit off. And Wilson said that Nate Sudfeld actually suffered a concussion last week against Wisconsin when he was sliding at one of those points. So really, it was all on Kaufman, and he just for some reason had a tough time completing those passes to receivers and being able to convert on third down. The running backs. When your leading rusher has 28 yards total on the ground, that's obviously that's a problem for IU, for anyone who wants to be successful, basically, and anyone who wants any semblance of balance in their offense, pass, run, inside, outside. You just can't have any balance offensively if you can't run the ball. And then defensively, again, it was a struggle for IU. They allowed obviously 62 points last week, and then 45 more this week. The second and third quarters they allowed a combined 35 points, which really kind of put it out of reach. Going into the fourth quarter, it was basically a done deal. Really nothing happened in the fourth quarter except for Penn State being able to run the ball effectively on IU and just kind of run out the clock. Again, we saw some tackling issues from IU. There were especially a couple. Allen Robinson, the great Penn State wide receiver, had a fantastic game. He had almost 200 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns, and on the longest of his touchdowns, a 53-yarder. He caught it was a lot like Houston's kind of. He caught a pass in the flat, was able to spin off a Mark Murphy tackle, and just went basically untouched the rest of the way. I use linebackers, and obviously Murphy's a safety, but I use linebackers had a really tough time bringing anyone down today, which put again a lot of pressure on Greg Heben, on Mark Murphy, on those guys to to basically save touchdowns all day. Heben, I think, made 2 or 3 touchdown saving tackles, or at least tackles that prevented huge plays from happening. So again, Greg Heben was one of their big guys on offense, or on defense, excuse me, who was kind of bailing them out at times. But IU allows 150 yards rushing to Purdue, or excuse me, to Penn State, which isn't terrible. But Matt McGloin, who's been phenomenal this year, threw for almost 400 yards. It looked great under the admittedly limited amount of pressure that IU was getting on him. And they were basically the opposite of IU today. When they were given an opportunity, they capitalized on it. They had a 4th and 9 from IU's 32 midway in the third quarter when IU was kind of building some momentum. IU was within 8. So it was a one-possession game. Penn State had the ball in IU's territory. 4th and 9. That's a huge opportunity to keep Penn State off the board, and McGloin completes a 10 or 11 yard pass to convert, and a couple plays later, Penn State gets into the end zone, and from then on, it was just it was kind of a lost cause for IU. But obviously after the game, talking with guys like Bowles or with Kaufman, the fact that there are some little things that IU still needs to work on, and that they have those chances, is kind of encouraging for next year, where they can, if they can figure out how to convert better on third down, to complete those passes, to get those big stops, on 4th and 9, on even third and longs, that they can be successful. And really, that's been the difference in a lot of their games this year. It's just in moments where they have to make a play, a lot of the times they don't. And that's something that Bolzer said after the game, that it's a little bit of an encouraging sign for next year, that they're at least close. They're at least given these opportunities. And next year, Kaufman is still. Wilson reminded us after the game, Kaufman is still their backup, basically. Trey Roberson is still the guy, or hypothetically would be the guy if he hadn't broken his leg in week 2. And they're kind of doing all of this with a backup QB who doesn't have a whole lot of experience. And basically Wilson and Bowles were kind of saying next year, hopefully we can figure out a way to actually perform well. I know Zach and I talked about last week when IU had a chance to beat Wisconsin and kind of be in the driver's seat in terms of going to the Big Ten championship game. That IU hadn't really played in a game like that. They didn't know how to win a game that had such big implications. And tonight was another example. These last 2 games are basically playoff games for IU, where they need to win. They needed to win tonight, and then next week at Purdue to be bowl eligible. Obviously, they don't win tonight, so next week is basically to beat Purdue, to get the bucket back, and really, if Purdue beats Illinois tonight, they'll have 5 wins, and they'll be kind of playing for a possible bowl spot. So maybe that will kind of encourage IU to, there's never been any shortage of motivation for the bucket game anyway, and that's kind of what the players, the coaches were saying after the game, is that we're so fortunate that we don't qualify for a bowl game, but we still have this huge game next week to end the season. So that's basically what IU is going to be looking forward to, kind of bouncing back after obviously last week's 48-point loss and today's 23-point loss. They'll be trying to, not necessarily save their honor or defend themselves, but just to kind of end the season on a note that isn't a 40-point loss, basically. They don't want to be that team that had a chance to possibly play for a Big Ten title and then just to get beat pretty badly in the rest of their games. So next week's a big game for IU, as it always is, against Purdue. It'll be on the road at Purdue, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond to 2 straight tough Big Ten losses, and to see if they can put something together against Purdue. And I think all of us are going to be there next week. Zach will be back, and Bruce Springsteen will be back to play us in for this video. But for now, I'm Alex McCarthy here at Happy Valley, which wasn't so happy for IU today, but I'm signing off, and we'll talk to you next week probably. So have a good weekend, and have a happy Thanksgiving also.